So let's be very clear here, right off the bat, that this gift list that Paul gives us is not complete. It's not exhaustive. Remember, this is Paul writing to a certain group of people at a certain time who's going through certain problems, and he's talking to them, telling them what they need to hear. Plus, when Paul talks about the gifts of the Spirit elsewhere, this list is modified. Something else I want you to notice here in the phrasing, that not everyone gets every gift, but they're handed out as the Spirit sees fit, depending on what a person needs and what the situation requires. And one more thing while we're on the topic. There's no hierarchy here. There is no one gift being better than the next. Instead, the emphasis here is that these gifts are given for the common good. So then to be clothed in power, as Jesus said, and to receive and operate in the gifts of the Spirit, as Paul describes, this isn't limited to you and me just sort of hogging that and having it for ourselves. It's not an individual benefit. No, these gifts are given for the common good, to continue God's mission to heal and renew this world. That is to address the dysfunction of evil wherever it shows up in our lives. And when we do this together, in the peace and harmony of God's Spirit, then the church becomes a sign of the beautiful possibilities that God's dream for this world holds. It's a sign of healing and a sign of justice for all. Number one, do you realize that you have been clothed in power from on high? That in fact, you are a spiritual being. There is more to you than just this. Or maybe the next question could be, are you aware of your gifts? Do you know what the Spirit has given you? Are you active in those gifts? Have you ever asked God to reveal to you what your gift might be? And again, I don't know what shape it'll take for you, what shape it has taken for you, but in my experience, where it all began for me was this openness and this obedience to the Spirit's promptings. For me, that first little tiny step was just to get out of the back row, and then it was a domino effect, and everything else changed. But again, that is only the beginning and not the end. So, are you working towards the greater good? Is your life pointed in that direction? Or are you doing all these great and amazing things? Has God blessed you with fantastic gifts, but your love for others is misplaced, so really it's not amounting to anything? To me, this is one of the most interesting part about the gifts of the Spirit. They are so powerful, yet so delicate. And if you're wondering even now what the litmus test is, how do you know if you're actually in sync with God? How do you know if you're actually using your gifts? Well, I'll say to you what a Bible college professor said to me once. He said, be good fruit inspectors. Inspect the fruit. All of it is in the fruit. But the best word, I think, for this idea is this word forbearance. Because forbearance is this calm endurance when you feel like you're being tested. And maybe you're being tested because of the waiting. You're tired of waiting. Things are not right. You want things to come. You want things to change. So in your testing, your forbearance, you're just waiting for something to change. Or perhaps you're being tested through provocation. Somebody is coming at you. Somebody is doing things to you. Someone has done things to you, and it is stretching the limits of your patience and your grace. But also in the mix for that word forbearance is this idea of anticipation. This godly anticipation that while you're in the middle of the mess, while you're in the middle of the chaos, you are still assured that God is going to make good on his promises. So then forbearance is about hanging in there with those people who need a lot of grace and a lot of patience. Forbearance is about faithfully sticking with people who are pushing and stretching your limits. It's about tracking with people who are carrying a heavy load. Forbearance is about just hanging in there. So then, my friends, if you're here this morning and you feel like your limits are being stretched, or perhaps you're carrying a heavy load and you have no idea what to do or what to say, and you've run out of words. If you're here this morning and you feel weak, or you would say that you're even suffering, or perhaps you're so uncertain about the present that you just want to throw in the towel, then I pray the Spirit's forbearance over you. That you would be able to hang in there in the calm endurance of God's Spirit, fully trusting that God will make good on his promises. And if you feel like you just do not have it in you to do that, then my prayer is that you would open yourself to the supernatural work of the Spirit, to allow the Spirit to search your heart, to pray things through you, whether through groans or sighs or tongues, whether it's in your car or on a walk or as you lay in bed tonight. Allow yourself to be an outlet for the Spirit's power, especially if you're in the thick of trouble and you have no idea what to say. It's all coming together now, isn't it? Everyone has come home. They've come from where they are from. And now they are going to go back out to where they are living, and they are going to be witnesses to what they just saw and heard. And like we've talked about before, what is a witness? To be a witness is to be living proof that God has not given up on this world, and that means the whole world. And in naming all those locations, Luke, the writer of Acts, is roughly covering the then known world. So in a sense, the whole world, as they knew it, is present and hearing about God in their own languages from the first disciples who were Galileans. And why is that an important detail? Because Galileans were backwater hicks. Now, try to think of it for a second. Close your eyes. Think of it really hard. Think of the most backwater place in Saskatchewan. Just think right now. You got a picture in your mind. Some of you were born there. Some of you commuted in from there. Here you're thinking about it. So in my mind, I'm thinking like the farthest place from civilization might be like Willow Grove or Evergreen. Like that's what I'm thinking. But for these people in this moment, they're watching, they're looking, they're recognizing, they're like, whoa, wait a second. These are Galileans saying these things? Like uneducated, unrefined Galileans? And they were dumbfounded. But you and I can see it, right? The Spirit is getting the word out. But also notice one last detail. The word is getting out in languages that the first believers did not understand. So then to speak in tongues means to communicate in a language that is not our own. And though the miracle of Pentecost has meant many other things to charismatic movements over the last century, we have often overlooked the simplest truth of all, that the apostles spoke in other tongues that people understood what they were saying. And it brought them all together and then out again for the healing of this world. Therefore, through the baptism of the Spirit, The disciples were formed into an agency of the Spirit and a community in which God would work to rescue the world from self-destruction. Spiritual ecstasy is not meant to be an end in and of itself. The goal is transformation. The purpose of the outpouring of the Spirit is to bring the kingdom near and change real life situations. And that, my friends, might be the big takeaway for us this morning. Because sometimes when we've been Christians for a long time, we get really selfish. And we want church and Jesus and Christianity to all be in our language, what we're used to, what we know, what we are comfortable with. But can I challenge you on that this morning? When we try to hoard the power that we have been clothed in, when we lack patience and long-suffering and forbearance, we are not working towards the common good. And you might look at other Christians, you might look at other churches, man, you might look at Lakeview, and you might say, sometimes Lakeview operates in such a way that it sounds like a foreign language to me. It's almost like Pentecost. And if you find yourself in that spot this morning, where these new and different approaches sound like foreign languages to you, that you don't understand, then may I say that that particular message may not be for you. Maybe it's a language or approach that your kids will understand. Maybe it's a language or style that is meant for your grandkids. Maybe it's a language or a posture that will be best understood by new visitors and new believers and perhaps even new Canadians. Or maybe it's a language for people who have long given up on Jesus and his church. So my challenge to you this morning, to us, will we allow the Spirit to speak through us in ways and in languages, though perhaps foreign to us, are completely understandable to those who have yet to hear the good news that God is making everything and everyone new?